snake. Doesn't he know? There's no such thing as a Gruffalo. Oh! Oh! Who is this creature with terrible claws and terrible teeth in his terrible jaws? He has knobbly knees and turned out toes and a poisonous wart at the end of his nose. His eyes are orange, his tongue is black, he has purple prickles all over his back. Oh, help. Oh, no. It's a Gruffalo.
Thank you so much, Axel, for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us today. Firstly, we're just going to jump straight in with our first question. Is there like a core memory from your childhood that you're regularly reminded of in your career? Any books or images that stand out as like nostalgic to you in your childhood?
Yeah, I don't really have that. I didn't have that many books. I had one picture book called Hirsch Heinrich. I grew up in Germany, as I'm German. And I didn't have many picture books, but I kind of liked books and liked to look at pictures. But there's not one thing that stands out. I had these books by a Danish illustrator about sort of strip stories about a little bear and his friends, and I loved those when I was little. So maybe that's the most.
Do you think, maybe I'm showing my age here, do you think growing up, were you more of like a child that like played outside, or a child that read, or a child that watched TV and film and cinema? What were your hobbies growing up?
Well, I like drawing, like I think all illustrators from childhood on, they do like drawing, and I played outside a lot. And yeah, I had I'm quite old, so I grew up in the 60s, and there wasn't that much television. It was only a few hours every day, and I did watch television, and I later read some comic strips like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck in those days. And yes, and yeah, very kind of normal childhood with mixed activities. I played football with friends and things like that. So yeah, nothing extraordinary.
What age did you first pick up a pen and discover your kind of love for drawing?
I have no idea. I don't really know. But the oldest surviving drawing is, I think, when I was 5 years old. And it's a naked man doing gymnastics from behind. I don't know why I drew that, but that's something my parents kept in.
Where do you think that kind of, interest sparked? How did you kind of, find your way into illustrations and drawing?
It's a very interesting question, but my parents must have given me paints and pens to draw. And when then I drew a lot at school, I think. And later on, I asked for nice color pencils for Christmas and things like that, and even oil paints when I was a teenager. So there was that interest, but I can't exactly pin down where it came from. But yeah, I obviously enjoyed it from early on.
And in terms of school and education, you obviously went to university to study history of art and then changed degrees. What was school like for you? Were you a good student, would you say? And do you think it was really imperative to your career today? Your education, what was it like?
Well, I think history of art was just a big error for me, because I'm not an academic, and I also kind of failed the system in Germany in the 70s. There were sort of too many students, too big the seminars, and I felt quite lost at university. And maybe it was very different from the British system, but I kind of couldn't cope with the system, and then I gave up and felt that that's not for me. And as I always liked drawing, I then took the turn and came to the UK and went to art school, and realized that illustration could be a proper job and something for me to do. And
yeah, so tell us what kind of went into that decision from thinking, I'm living in Germany, and now I know that I want to follow art more, and to come to art school. What sort of took you down that path?
Yes, it was partly the idea to live abroad and learn another language better than I had English at school, but it wasn't, obviously, it's still not very good, but after 40 years. But I wanted to live abroad, and it was very easy with the EU. You could just apply, and I visited a friend at Bath Academy of Art at the time, and she was doing ceramics there, and I had the idea, why don't I apply there? I was still living with my parents in Hamburg, so I needed to get out. So all these things combined made me apply at Bath Academy of Art, and they took me, and then the rest is history. So I did my 3 years in Corsham near Bath, and afterwards I moved to London and tried to succeeded to work as an illustrator, actually. Right?
What was kind of the pathway, I guess, that you had out of art school into your career?
Well, I shouldn't be too negative about my art school now, because I always had the idea that I would learn something, that I would have a teacher who would teach me things, and that wasn't somehow happening there. But I never regretted going to art school, because it gave me a chance to just draw for 3 years. So a lot of drawing, and B, the idea that illustration was a proper job was planted in my head at that time. So, but I had teachers who said, why don't you just go around with your portfolio and show your work? So I would recommend, of course, anybody to go to art school. But my personal expectation wasn't quite fulfilled by it.
At what point in your kind of career did you, think that you would build essentially a name for yourself in children's? Was that kind of planned, or was it kind of by accident?
Well, I did like picture books, and I did like children's books, and I had the feeling that my slightly humoristic, cartoony style would lend itself to children's book illustration. And I always thought that that's the most worthwhile thing to do. It's lovely to do drawings for children and parents, as children and parents often read those books together. But when I started off, I did a lot of editorial illustrations for magazines, newspapers, for grown-ups as well, and some advertising. And over the years, it shifted towards picture books and children's books. So nowadays, it's probably more than 90% children's book work. But at the beginning, I did a lot of editorial work. And it was very important, I think, and a very good thing to do.
What was that shift like, going from working in editorial and working in advertising to then working in children's illustration? And obviously, like, your most iconic work is the Gruffalo, that's so loved by like both adults and children, and is so like synonymous with a lot of people in their childhood. What was that shift like? And then I guess the second question would be like, what was it like doing the Gruffalo and working with Julia Donaldson?
It wasn't a shift, because I started off I took my portfolio around. In those days, there was nothing happening digitally, so I had to ring up people, can I show my work, can I show my portfolio, and went around in London as well as in Germany, because I have that as well. And editorial work was just a good exercise and a good way to earn money, because usually you had like a week or two to do the picture and then get some money for it. And picture books is obviously more a long-term thing. But I did, right from the beginning, do picture books or children's books as well. So it all happened simultaneously, and it feels as if I've illustrated any subject under the sun after working in editorial illustration for a few years. So, and then, the Gruffalo, I have probably been working for over 10 years in illustration already, and I had books published, and then the Gruffalo came along, and it obviously was very successful and changed my life.
Yeah. And obviously, like, the Gruffalo was then animated. So were you involved in the animation process? And what was that like for you?
The Gruffalo was quite early translated into the theatre medium. So there was a theatre show quite early on, but it took about 10 years till we felt the Gruffalo was ready to be animated. And we spent a long time finding the right producers, and we finally found Magic Light Pictures who did the adaptation. And it was, they've done, it's the same company, the same production company has now done lots of our books and transformed them into animated films. And I feel they always do it really nicely. They're they're very close to the books and they want to do them justice. And so you have to be able to let go, because the picture book is obviously, you can't make a film out of a picture book, it would last 5 minutes. So they have to extend the story and invent new events. And so it changes a lot, and it requires a different, how do you say, a different sense of drama. A film that has to be different from a book. And yeah, it is a question of letting Gruffalo have a life of his own in other media, but that's fine, as long as you accept it. I know some illustrators probably find it very hard to let go, but it was fine for me, and I'm very happy with the results. And they're, again, very popular, and maybe it's nice for children to have different visions of a story on the stage or in a book or in a film.
Zoe and I are in that prime generation where we grew up watching the Gruffalo and enjoying it. And then I remember, like, you know, in more recent years going on the Gruffalo ride at Chessington and things like that.
You've done that.
I'm interested. I think, you know, you kind of, we kind of touched on a bit about the digital age and how, you know, in some ways things have changed. Do you think the way that you know, fundamentally do your art form has changed, or is it still, you know, the same as it was when you did it back in art school?
For me, it's exactly the same. I haven't made any concessions towards the modern life or modern way of doing illustration. So I'm working very, very traditionally with pen and ink and color pencils, and on paper, on little scraps of paper, which I then gather when the deadline is there, I gather them and put them in an envelope and send them to the publisher. So there's no change in my work at all. And as it's all working very well, the publishers are not, there's no pressure from them to change anything. So occasionally, if I need a background changed, I ask them to do it on Photoshop, but I can't even do Photoshop on myself. I can just about do emails and Zoom meetings, as we can see now, just about.
I kind of love that technology has changed so much, but then at its heart, the brilliant work that you produce today still is still done in a traditional medium.
Yeah, it takes a lot of time to adopt to learn about computers. I mean, or how to do work digitally, and maybe I'm just too lazy, or I don't want to confront myself with it, and I just carry on as I have for the last 30 years.
I think though as well, like, children today grow up around so much digital content and so much digital media. It's nice to be able to have traditional art forms that they can enjoy as well.
Yes, and I think a drawing by hand still looks different from a drawing done on the computer. Although I know there's very brilliant. There are many illustrators who do really brilliant things with digitally generated images, but for me, it's just not for me.
Looking back, you know, on your huge career of you know, brilliant works, is there any sort of works that really stand out to you?
I mean, obviously, the Gruffalo has been the biggest, most popular book that I've done with Julia Donaldson, but yeah, we've done many books, and I always do them the same way, and it feels very steady. There's nothing that is like a big milestone or changed anything. I didn't imagine that this would happen, and the success of the Gruffalo is really, I mean, it's so crazy, it's so big, and it's been translated into so many languages, and of course it's something that you don't expect, and I don't think anybody goes into children's book illustration to become famous or rich or anything. So I was very, very lucky in that regard. It's also a bit strange and ambivalent to have this big successful book, and that created this character that is so famous. And yeah.
Where are you seeing the kind of future of illustration and animation going, and kind of what excites you about the industry today?
Picture books are still there. I think they're still selling very well. Children, so it's parents really buying the books and reading them with their children seems to be as important as it was 30 years ago. It's not dying out in spite of all the competition with all the screens. I mean, I see on the tube, I see small children with a screen, with whatever device it is in their hands. But books are still valid and important, I think. And so I hope they have a future as well. And Yes, animation. I don't know. I don't know much about that business, but it seems to be that the films that have been produced and that are on TV now. Each Christmas, the BBC shows one of our films, and I think the response is largely positive, and there are millions of viewers. And again, it seems something that has a future.
With books and illustrations in a way that I don't feel has been disrupted in the same way that, you know, television has. I think it's one of those mediums that's safe for years to come.
Yes, and parents, I think the good thing about picture books or books in general maybe is that parents had their experience from their own childhood. And I know sadly there are many households where there are no books at all in this country and other countries as well. But I find, parents who had books or who read the Gruffalo as a child and had maybe fond memories of reading it or having it read to by their parents will do the same to their children. So that's really a nice thing about children's books so far, that seems to happen again and again.
I think as well at schools, I think we are lucky that the school system, I think, really promotes early literacy in children as well.
Yes. Yeah. I think they could do more and not close their libraries and things like that. There are lots of worrying trends. When I go to schools, I are encouraged to read and to draw as well. That's another very important aspect, that they draw themselves and be creative.
Thank you so much for speaking to us today. We really appreciate it. And we hope that everyone watching as well really enjoyed our interview and our little chat. And thank you for joining us to come back to the beginning.
Thank you.
Thank you.